First of all, I want to thank Mally for sponsoring us again today, and our applause to them. We're going to bring up Charlie Roberts and introduce his friend and our keynote speaker, David Starr, today. Thank you.
First of all, congratulations to all the Pioneer Award winners today. So, real quick, it's my honor to introduce the keynote speaker, David Starr. He's a personal friend of mine for over 10 years. He's my neighbor. He's been racing all his life. He started out racing when he was 14. In 1997, he started with the NASCAR Truck Series. He was voted in 2002 the most popular driver by his peers. And then in the last 7 years, he's been the Xfinity Series driver, and he's been dabbling in and out of the Cup races as well. So without further ado, I know David said he's got 20 minutes. He goes, that's all I've got, so I'm going to keep it real short. So David, here you come.
Drivers, start your engines! David Starr shows the way.
David Starr, the driver on the move to the inside.
David Starr making a bid.
David Starr flares down to the inside.
David Starr starting to tiptoe away.
David Starr's got a big lead right now.
David Starr starting to open up now as he heads off the end of the back stretch. Here comes David Starr out of David Starr. David Starr will win at Las Vegas.
Good job, baby. Good job. Good job.
I wanted to win this race bad. I can't believe I'm in victory lane at Marsville Speedway. This is incredible.
David Starr is always a star when he comes to Texas. Recently, he teamed up with his sponsor, Zachary. Their office is located in San Antonio. They're a Texas company, too. David taking part, meeting some employees, signing some autographs.
Definitely excited to have Zachary on board with us.
Please welcome from Houston, Texas, David Starr.
Well, good afternoon. Wow, that'll get you fired up. Nothing will. I love saying that. My name's David Starr. I'm from Houston, Texas. And what an honor and a privilege it is to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you, MACS, for giving me this opportunity. And I wanted to come here and just kind of share my story. You know, you don't really, I'm never really about me. It's kind of weird to talk about yourself, but, you know, they asked me to come speak and talk about living your dream, finding your passion, and taking advantage of your passion and making a living at it. And I wanted to share with you, when I was a 4-year-old kid from Houston, Texas, was able to have a dream and to live his dream today, how I got there. It's a long story. It takes a lot more than 20 minutes, but I'm trying to give it to you as best I can. You know, when I was born, my dad, Jimmy Starr, was working in the racing business. He was a crew chief for a company called Fresh Orange Juice out of Houston, Texas. They made orange juice, sold it all over the world, and they had race cars. They had a guy named Tony Bittenhausen Jr. that drove one of the cars, another guy named Ronnie Shumley. From the time I was 3-4 years old, I remember when I was 3, I remember when I was 4. The only thing I remember about it is all the racing stuff, going to the racetrack when they raced in Houston at the local racetrack with my father. I remember all the race car drivers. It was just like, man, when I was 4 going to the races, I can tell you like it was yesterday, all the drivers, who won the championships, everything about it when I was 4 years old. I can't tell you about the school stuff or anything else, but I can tell you where the dream started. My dream of being a professional race car driver started at that age at 4 when I was going to the races with my dad. My dad had 3 sons. There were 3 of us. And in the racing business, having his job, he was gone a lot. That didn't sit real well with my mom. She didn't like that. Dad was gone all the time, and my grandparents called us the termites because we got into everything. And so anyway, she asked him to quit the business. And I wanted to back up a little bit and say a couple things. This is my 23rd year. 2020 is my 23rd year being a professional NASCAR driver. I've won 6 professional races, a lot of top 10s, a lot of top 5s. I've driven for my great friend AJ Foyt, who's my idol growing up. I've driven for a short period of time Richard Petty. Also got to drive for a guy named Randy Moss when he was at the heyday of his career playing for the New England Patriots, when him and Tom Brady were a big force in the NFL. So all that being said, it took a lot of sacrifices, a lot of never giving up to be able to get to that point. And man, and it just started from my dad. My dream started there. My dad quit the racing business when I was 7 years old. And man, I had a passion for it. He stopped completely, cold turkey, just stopped going to the racetrack. I was devastated as a 7-year-old. But how I fueled that passion, how I kept learning about racing and going to racing, I was lucky enough that my neighbor was racing dirt cars at the local dirt track. And man, as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, I learned everything I could learn about it. They were building cars next to my house in their garage, man. I was watching them weld, build a roll cage. They were building transmissions, building engines, and man, I was paying attention. I was watching everything. Every Saturday night, I was in that pickup truck with my neighbor going to the races watching. And when I turned 14 years old, the local dirt track had a class, affordable racing class, where people could afford to race. And you took a production car, and you took the glass out of it, all the plastic. It had to be completely stock, completely stock. You couldn't enhance the engine. And man, I'm watching these cars race out there, and I'm like, God, I want to race so bad. You know, going and being in school, I didn't do too well in school, but I read about AJ Foyt. I read about Richard Petty. I read about Mario Andretti. The only thing I did in school was read about auto racing. I had all the books. I took some. I still have them today. I knew about AJ Foyt before I was 8, 9 years old. I knew everything about him. And he was actually from my hometown of Houston, Texas. But anyway, getting back to the dirt car deal, man, with my family, we would go to church on Sundays. My dad would ask me after church, hey, how Jerry do, how Gary do, my neighbors, you know. I said, well, Dad, they did okay, but, you know, they just, man, they need a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And, but anyway, that was how I fueled my passion from the time I was 7 when my dad quit until the time I started when I was 14. My dad quit the racing business and opened up our business, automotive transmission shop. And that was really a cool deal for me and our family. I have two brothers and a sister. They're all college educated from our automotive, our transmission shop. My dad really worked hard and took care of his family. I barely made it out of high school. College wasn't in my future. But when I came home from church that afternoon and was talking to my dad about the night before how my neighbor did, I said, Dad, they got a racing series out there. It's called the Bomber Class. It doesn't look like it's very expensive, and man, I want to race, I want to race, I want to race. He knew I wanted to race, and he said, I'll tell you what, son, I'll teach you, I'll help you, but only one condition. You got to do all the work. You do all the work, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to weld properly. I'll teach you how to design a roll cage where it's strong and you won't get hurt, but you got to learn, you got to pay attention to me, and the biggest thing, you got to be committed to it. I don't want to waste my time. I'm busy. If you want to do this, you got to let me know you're committed. So, Dad, man, I'm all in, man. I'm all in. So he said, well, you need to find a car. So we did a lot of our automotive transmission shop. We bought a lot of used parts from a junkyard. My dad said, hey, you need to find a car. I suggest you call the junkyard. So I called Chris. Chris owned a junkyard right down the road. I called Chris. I said, Chris, it's David Starr. Man, me and my dad are going to build a race car. I need a car. He said, well, come see me. I went down to his junkyard. He walked me out back. There was a 1974 Buick Skylark out there. And he said, see that car right there? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's yours. I said, it's mine. I said, how much you want for it? He said, it's yours. Nothing. He said, I just want to make sure, I want to know that you're doing good in school, you're making good grades, and if you'll continue to make good grades, then that car will always be used. You won't owe me anything. And I want to see my name on it when you're racing. So man, I went down there, picked up that car, brought it back to my dad's shop. My dad went and brought the tubing. And man, I was bending, we had a tubing bender, welder, and man, my dad was educating me. And I went through a lot of tubing because I overbent it, didn't weld it right, had to cut it off, grind it. Anyway, we built my first race car, and here I was, man, a 14-year-old kid going to the racetrack. The interesting part of it, my dad taught me camber caster. He taught me how to weld the spider gears in the rear end. He taught me about shocks and springs, how to make the car turn into the corner. I mean, he educated me on the physics of a car and how they work. It was awesome. My car was great. I went to the racetrack, man, all of a sudden I'm 14 years old, I'm driving in this bomber class, and I'm winning races. Man, I'm on top of the world, you know. It's like, man, it don't get any better than this, you know. The interesting part, my dad never came when he came to the racetrack on Saturday nights, he never came down to the pit area. He watched from the stands. And I had a pickup truck and a trailer that my dad let me use. He paid for the tubing, he paid for a lot of the stuff to help me build that first car. But my dad never came down to the pit area and participated in anything. And I asked him years later, I said, hey Dad, man, what happened? He said, son, it was tough on me, but he said, I knew you wanted to be a race car driver, and I knew you loved this business. He said, me and being down there helping you, you were going to learn faster on your own and learn how to do it on your own. I watched you from afar, and you know the times I got on to you. When I got way outside the box when doing something I wasn't supposed to do, he set me down and told me what I needed to do. But he watched me from afar, and he said, man, that was probably one of the toughest things I ever did when you first started racing, but I wanted you to learn the business. Learn how to do it. And so, man, I went on to winning races, and next thing you know, a couple of weeks, my car wouldn't run very good, didn't have no power. I wasn't winning at all, and I was actually not even close to winning. And we come home from church one afternoon, my dad said, hey, you're struggling, aren't you? I said, man, that thing won't run, Dad. He said, don't have no power. The engine had to be stock. He said, well, you need a valve job. You got to take the cylinder heads off. You need to send them to the machine shop. You need to seal up the motor. You need to get your power. You need to get your power back. I said, valve job? He said, yeah, come to the shop after school, take the heads off, take the exhaust off, carburetor intake, take the heads off, send them to the machine shop, and I did. We sent them to the machine shop. I told a couple more mechanics there, I said, hey guys, you know, tell the machine shop that, hey, I need these back. You know, it's Monday. I took my engine apart Monday. I got to race on Saturday. So I got the stuff back on Thursday afternoon after school. I went back to my dad's shop, got my cylinder heads. They done put new valves in them, valve seats. Got, you know, I'm going to put my engine together, get my power back. I called the parts house that we used, Auto Supply store down the road. They sent a gasket set. Man, I put that engine together with the help of a couple of my mechanics. Friday evening, I came to the shop. My dad came out there and he said, let me show you something about advancing the timing. Let me show you how to get a little bit more power. He worked with me and showed me how to lock the weights in the distributor, how to get a little bit more instant power. You know, it was awesome. And I said, man, thanks, Dad. So, I don't know, about 9 o'clock that night, you know, I got a little wooden trailer. I hooked it up to the truck, and man, I put that car on that trailer. I'm loading up my toolboxes in the back of the truck. My dad came out there, and he said, hey, how much did that cost? I'm like, what cost? He said, well, you know, getting these heads reworked, and you know, where'd you get the gasket set to put the engine back together? I said, well, man, Dad, I guess you and Mom, I just signed the ticket, you know. I'm like, man, you and Mom paid for it, I guess. He said, well, it's $425. And, you know, I remember it like it was yesterday. I said, man, yeah, Dad, y'all got it? He said, well, come inside the office, come see me. So I walk inside our office of our shop. He's sitting there, and he said, hey, I'm going to make a deal with you. You can take that car to the racetrack and race it when you pay me back. I said, Dad, I'm 14 years old. I don't have $425. Where am I going to get $425? We race tomorrow. And he said, well, look, I'll make a deal with you. This is what I want you to do. When you pay me back, that race car can leave this property. I'm like, what? There's no way. You know, so man, he said, that's the deal. He said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to come to this shop after school, after sports, whatever. We've had this for a long time. I want you to take transmissions out of cars. You know how to do it. You've been doing it. Take transmissions. I want you to put them on the transmission bench. I want you to take them apart. You take the valve body off. Then you take the pump out. I want you to dissect these transmissions. I want you to tell me what's wrong with them. I want you to go to our parts department. I want you to order the right transmission kit, because we had our own parts department on the transmission stuff, torque converters, anything you needed. I want you to get the right kit. I want you to clean everything up, put the transmission case in the cleaner. I want you to get it ready, and we're going to put it back together. And I tell you what, when you pay me back my $425, you can take that race car to the racetrack. And I want you to know that it took me 8 weeks, 2 months. I went back to the races with my neighbor to help them, watching people out there that I should have been out there racing. And I mean, I'm going to share with you, I hated my dad. I hated him. I hated that man. I hated him. But 8 weeks later, I could put together a 350 transmission, a 400 transmission. Transmissions work on pressure. Clutches get wore out. They don't have grip. Transmission won't go. You got little O-rings in the transmission. O-ring would break, wouldn't have the pressure, so it wouldn't shift gear from second to third or get into overdrive. I learned about transmissions as a 14-year-old kid. I could build transmissions. I hated my dad. I finally went back to the racetrack. He told me years later, he said, hey, he was teaching me life lessons. If you want anything in life, you got to work for them. I wanted to race so bad. My dad taught me life lessons, and he also taught me my trade. There's any day, my neighbors, friends, I can build a transmission, I can do a brake job, anything on a car. I'm a little bit behind on the technology today, but I can fix any car. I can fix a transmission, a computer. I can fix anything on a car. Brake job, it don't matter what it is. I can fix it, because my dad had an automotive transmission shop, but I didn't like my dad. I hated that guy. I hated his guts. And I hate to keep saying that. You got to understand, a 14-year-old kid that has to come to the shop, work his tail off, and I couldn't go race that car. I had rage inside my body. But the lessons my father taught me, the lessons he taught me, I'm sure it hurt him worse than it hurt me, but he couldn't tell me. He taught me lessons in life. Anything you want in life, you can achieve it, but you got to work for it. And man, I went to the racetrack, won races. You know, my neighbor that I've been going to the races with for years, there was a guy named David Bobinry from New York, from Buffalo, New York. Moved down to Houston, Texas, because he was in the oil and gas business. Worked for Daniel Industries. Man, he had these big dirt late model cars. They're about $100,000 each. I think the car itself was probably 60 grand, and the motors he had in them was another 60 grand. So the cars were over 100 grand. He had 4 of them. And his driver was Gary, my neighbor. And do you know, I raced 2 years in that bomber class, won a championship, won races. David Bobinry was watching me. He watched that I worked on my car. He watched that I fixed my car. I had to make adjustments. I always parked by my neighbor Gary and their car at the racetrack. I parked next to him because I knew him. And they watched me, and I was winning. Gary wasn't winning. Next thing you know, I get a phone call at my dad's shop. It's David Bobinry. He said, hey, this is David Bobinry. Hey, Bo, what's up, David? Hey, man, I want to talk to you. Come to my house. So, man, I go to his house, got this big shop in the backyard, got a big hauler. I mean, just cool deal. He said, I want you to drive my race car. I'm like, me? You know, I'm 16, just turning 16 years old. And this guy's going to put me in a full-blown race car that cost over 100 grand. He's got crew members. And he said, man, I like the way you work. He said, I love your passion. You don't ever give up. You're out there digging. You're working on your car. You wreck your car. You come back the next week. It looks perfect. And you fixed it. He said, I want you to be my driver. I'm like, man. I was like, wow, awesome. Yes, I'll be your driver. Only problem is my neighbor he just fired my neighbor that lives next door to me. You know what I mean? That was a weird deal, you know. But anyway, I went on to race for David Bobinry for, man, 5-6 years, dirt tracks. We won races in Houston. he said, hey man, I want to see if we're any good. Let's go over to Beaumont, Texas. We went over there, we win. Let's go up to Dallas-Fort Worth area. We go up there, but Devil's Bow Speedway, we win. He said, let's go over to Louisiana, see if we can beat those guys. We Louisiana. Next thing you know, we're in Arkansas. Next thing you know, we're in South Carolina. Things are going great, you know. And that was really a cool time. And during that time, my uncle, we had this big record service in Houston, Texas, had about 80 records. He said, hey, he went to Charlotte, North Carolina to go drive a car at a racing school at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Well, when he did that, he came back to Houston and he said, hey, I want to build a racing school. I said, man, you got to be kidding. So, man, he went to North Carolina and bought 10 cars from the big racing team. I think we got 10 cars from Hendrick Motorsports. And we started our NASCAR racing school at Texas World Speedway, a 2-mile super speedway. Well, man, I was like, wow, you know. My mom always told me, she would always tell me, there's no substitute for hard work. She had always said, hard work works. If you want something bad enough, go out there and get it. And she said, you know, the racing business as she saw it, because she was always around it, she'd always tell me, you're in the people business, David. You're in the people business. Be nice. Be kind to people. Always make sure you thank somebody that helps you. David Bowman, mow his grass. Do whatever you can for these people, but go out of your way. Just always say thank you. Be appreciative. Well, when my uncle opened this racing school, one of our first classes was an event. We had a 4-day racing school, and a guy named Norman Miller came. Norman Miller owned Interstate Batteries. He showed up. You know who he brought with him? He brought Joe Gibbs, the coach of the Washington Redskins. He brought Joe Gibbs with him. Joe Gibbs brought J.D. Gibbs and Corey Gibbs. And there was another guy with him named Don Carter. Don Carter on the Dallas Mavericks NBA basketball team at the time. I didn't know any of these people. I became to know them after they spent 4 days with us. Joe Gibbs was telling me, David, I'm looking at getting into the racing business. I said, man, hey coach, man, I'm a race car driver and I want to be a professional race car driver. So you meet all these people, and it was the coolest thing ever. Also, that day I met a person named David and Susan Hocker. They were at our racing school. Become great friends with them. They said, hey man, I said, man, I race dirt cars. I'm actually racing up in Dallas next week. And David and Susan Hocker showed up. They came to my race. They said, they asked me after I won this race at Devil's Bowl Speedway in Dallas, Texas. We all live in Houston. They live in Houston. They said, hey, we want you to come over for dinner one night. So they gave me their address and come talk to us. David and Susan Hocker. Man, I pulled up my little Chevrolet pickup at their house. There was a guard gate. I'm like, man, I got to be at the wrong place. I mean, you talking a mansion. They never told me who they were or what they did. They were just my friends. I treated them like I treated everybody. My mom always said, be good to everybody. Treat everybody equal. So I'm good to everybody. I had no idea that they were the first investors in compact computers. And they had more money than God. In their house, I mean, when I walked into their house, I mean, I was like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. You know, they had a basketball court inside their house. They had a swimming pool inside their house. They said, hey, we just want to talk to you. We like you. You're doing good. What's your goals? I said, hey, I want to be a NASCAR driver. They said, we want to help you. I said, you want to help me? I said, yeah, we want you to go to North Carolina and find us a team. We want to buy a team. We want you to be the driver. I'm like, really? I mean, I can't believe this is happening. You know what I mean? I can't believe it. So they sent me to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm looking around. I'm meeting people. I'm seeing all these different racing teams. I'm calling back on the phone, telling them what I found. There's a guy out of Texas that had a team. His son drove. We bought their team for $2.5 million. We bought half their team for $2.5 million. In 1996, I was going to run 5 races. They would own half the team. In 1997, I would race full-time in the NASCAR Busch Series. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina from Houston. And man, I was testing. Donnie Allison was our crew chief. And man, it was amazing. But that got taken away from me. That got taken away from me. That opportunity of a lifetime got taken away from me. And man, I was mad. And my mom always said, hey, if you try something hard enough, you're going to fail. You're going to fail at something you try hard enough, but I want you to move forward. My mom always told me, move forward. I never really understand it. She said, fall forward. And I never really got it. She always said, my mom was my biggest supporter. It's like, be nice to people, be determined, move forward, fall forward, even when you're at the lowest point. And I was at the lowest point because I worked all my life and I thought I had this opportunity and it got taken away from me. Well, years later, I got another opportunity and I made it to NASCAR. I drove for AJ Foyt. AJ Foyt is one of my best friends. Joe Gibbs called me and he said, hey, Randy Moss loves NASCAR. I'm going to bring him into the sport. You're going to be his driver. I drove for Randy Moss for 2 years. You know, hard work, determination, never giving up, never quitting no matter what. I have more stuff to tell you, but I don't have time to tell you. You know, I just didn't get to NASCAR. I made it to NASCAR when I was 28 years old. 28 years old. Drivers today, if you're 28, you're washed up and gone. I'm 52 years old now, but I never quit dreaming. I never quit working. I never quit. And I made it. This is my 23rd season. I just raced last week in Daytona. Almost won the race, got involved in a wreck. I'm leaving here in a couple hours going to Las Vegas. I love what I do. Thank God my dad had that automotive shop and that transmission shop. I was proud. I'm a proud mechanic. But I took it further than that, and I'm living my dream today. I wish I could tell you all the story. There's so much more to tell you. It's really cool. But man, my parents, what they did for me. And when times get tough, and my mom always said, when you fail, you will fail if you want something bad enough. Fall forward. And I never got move forward, fall forward. My mom always said, keep moving forward. I never got it. And the point was, don't ever quit. Because failure is going to come. The people that can work through the failures, you can achieve any dream. I'm a 4-year-old kid that had a dream. I live my dream today. And I'm thankful y'all gave me the opportunity to come here and talk to you. I hope that inspired you a little bit. And thank you for letting me share my story with you. Thank you. Do we have time for a couple of questions? Anybody got any questions about racing or NASCAR? Yes, sir.
You love your dad now.
Excuse me?
You love your dad now.
I love my dad. I love my dad and my sister. You know, my sister told me not too long ago, and I don't want to get emotional, but she said, when you're on TV, you should see your mom and dad. They glow. You know, and I feel like, you know, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And hundreds of other people that helped me get to where I'm at today. So my parents love it when I win. They encourage me when I lose. And they glow when they watch me on TV every week. I don't see them because they're watching on TV. But my sister told me at an event, she spoke. And she told me that. I thought that was pretty cool. So thank you.
Okay, our thanks to David, and class will be starting up very soon.